Hello and welcome to Grinding Meaning number 38, Personality, Facade, and Nature. Oh, wow, you can insert ads now. Sorry, I just got a notification. Yeah, I think I will not be doing that. Well, thank you for joining me. I am just going to be hitting Flight Pass, and the timing is impeccable. Look at that Zeppelin up there. Should fade out in a second. There we go. Yes, I'm going to be going back to the elephant and rider analogy, although it's not a one-to-one with what I'm talking about. It's pretty damn close. And let me just see if I am... Yep, my stream is good. Rough out here for a solo streamer. I know I've done it a million times, but I'll do the elephant and rider thing again, which is this way of looking at yourself and other people as if you're sort of two entities in conflict. You have the elephant and the rider. The elephant is your unconscious, emotional, primal side. It makes the vast majority of your decisions, and if as a situation gets more real, it's the one running the show. The rider is your intellectual side, your abstract thinking side, your narrative generator, the part of you that basically generates a story about yourself and has an idea of who you are that may or may not coincide with what you actually are. Because the elephant is really what you are, and the rider is sort of the agent slash press secretary slash lawyer. Think of it like a prima donna rock star type who's just getting in all kinds of trouble and pissing people off and and then you have their agent just trying to smooth things over and craft a narrative that makes you not look so bad, or try to make you look as good as possible. And that is the role of the rider. And there are some people where I'm not putting myself on this list, but there are certain amazing people out there to where they're basically a single entity. Like, what they think they are or how they think they are is very, very similar to what they are. And these are incredibly consistent people. On the other end of the spectrum are the people who the story they tell themselves about themselves is so far removed from the actual way they conduct themselves in the world that you could call them quite delusional. An example is a guy who thinks he's just a super badass at something or everything, but in reality, they're really incompetent, have no particular skills, and in whatever it is they think they're good at, objectively, they're pretty terrible at. But that's not the story they tell themselves. And if you find yourself in a position where someone wants to believe they're a particular thing, and if they run into reality, they might actually get aggressive against, like, I think the classic example is someone who fancies themselves being good at video games, or a particular video game. And when they're playing, they're actually pretty terrible and things keep going sideways. These are the people that, like, throw their controller down and get really mad, even when they're just playing computer players, because they don't think the outcome that occurred was correct because of the way they see themselves isn't matching up to reality. And if people will do that with inanimate objects, it's a lot easier to put it on other people. There are people, you have a nature, everybody does, that they want to act out. Some benevolent, some malevolent. And a good example is an angry person. Now, from the angry person's perspective, they're not an angry person. There just happens to be this constant stream of events that they experience that perfectly justify their anger. Now, part of that is just how they choose to experience the events, but another big part is how they consistently put themselves into situations where things that are going to upset them are likely to occur. Like, I know people who will play a particular game, but they always get really angry while they're playing. And it's like, why do you play if you get angry? No, I like the game. It's just people piss me off. And it's like, this is kind of an elephant and rider split. Like, they are, on the face of it, seeking out interactions that consistently make them angry. You kind of have to assume that's the goal. Now, if it's something you can avoid, it's a little bit different. But if it's something you're doing for recreation, that's supposedly recreation, but all it does is make you angry, I think it's safe to assume that the actual goal, their nature, is that they want conflict. They want to be angry at people. But they don't want to, or they're unable to acknowledge that reality or that truth about themselves, and they'd prefer to tell themselves a story about how, hey, I'm just trying to play the game, but I just keep running into assholes. So, you know, if they're going to be assholes to me, I'm going to be assholes to them. They've crafted this narrative that essentially makes them faultless, or even the victim. And I knew I couldn't avoid talking about Rocket League, but there are and I'm sure it's the same thing in Call of Duty and several other games, where a big part of the player population, the reason that they're there is because they want to get into conflict. A lot of them probably get treated like crap in real life, and people are constantly basically crapping on them and making them miserable in various ways. And one of the ways to cope with that is to make other people miserable. Obviously not the best way to go about dealing with it, but it's just something that exists. So a lot of people will come right into a game of Rocket League, and the way they want to, there are a lot of throwers in Rocket League, at least by the way I measure it. And I would even say more than half of people, more than half of the time, are engaging in some kind of sabotage, whether that be self or team. And sometimes they're aware of it. Like they've actually owned that, hey, I just come in to freaking do this, and because I enjoy upsetting people or whatever. They wouldn't put it that way. They probably craft a narrative about how, hey, I'm just having fun. You know, I'm just trolling people. It's like, well, I think I've said this before. My definition of a troll is, part of it anyway, is someone whose antics are appreciated by people other than the one performing them. There are several very funny troll-like people, and watching them do their thing is entertaining. But if you have no audience and you're just doing it for yourself, that's not trolling, that's you being toxic. And even if you have like a friend that you're doing it with and you both think it's funny, that's just team toxic, which is a lot of things that happens in Rocket League. It is interesting because I have these custom quick chats, because the thrower, you know, there's a limited number of ways that you can sabotage people, and it mostly takes the form of performing way under your current skill. In Rocket League, you have ranks as bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, and champion. And I'm typically somewhere in diamond, usually near the bottom on the casual matchmaking rating. And people will play at, I thought I saw something, will often play at like less than gold. Often they'll be playing at a silver level. And it's like, I could not sleep for 2 days, be drunk, and have one eye closed, and I'll still play at like at a gold or platinum level. Like there's no situation that causes someone to play that badly. I mean, they will start underperforming a bot, and bots, even the bots that they use in the highest levels of casual matches, the bots will still perform at a silver, almost a gold level. There are a lot of things that they can't do, but what they do very consistently. They don't have weird whiffs. So I have, go back to the thing, I have the quick chats that call out the specific maneuvers. Most of those involve someone who is approaching the ball, which causes the teammates to start to read ahead as to what's coming next. And then they will just bail on the shot. They'll like veer off, or they'll make an approach that a silver wouldn't even make, and then just, fling themselves by the ball. Sometimes they're not even close to it, and have a quick shot or a quick chat for, that's bailing on a shot. Also, people, instead of trying to take the ball downfield or pass it to someone, or even just keep dribbling it downfield, they will like hit it, basically drop it right in the lap of the other team, and they don't even follow it up. Like if you accidentally hit it where you don't really want to hit it, and you see that, the other team's going to get it, a lot of times you'll make a second effort. Even if you can't keep them from getting it, you can keep them from doing what they want with it. But as soon as they tap it, basically drop it in the other team's lap, they'll immediately just like veer off and go somewhere else. So they're not a part of what's about to occur. And I call that deliberate turnover. There's also when they go up, like they're going to challenge someone, who's about to take a shot or pass it, and then they'll just like not challenge. They'll just like sit there or, veer off before they even get there. They have a no challenge macro. And then sometimes people will basically just hide downfield away from the action, because most people, they're not playing on 3 screens. They don't have a 180-degree field of view. So a lot of times if people are hiding downfield, their teammates, they just know that they're not there. They don't realize that they're like basically parked downfield or doing donuts in the other team's goal or whatever it is they're doing down there. And I have one for that. So, and it's an interesting split, because some people, I would say most of the people that are engaging at this at some level, if you start naming the thrower maneuvers that they're employing, most people will stop, because they will unconsciously understand that they risk exposure, not so much to other people, but to themselves. Like the elephant wants to do this thing, but the elephant also has fear of like exposure. That the elephant has, you risk the damage of it is an elephant and rider thing, but you risk the damaging your self-image. So the people at the less toxic end will often stop doing the things. But as you get, because they can't hide it from themselves if you're calling out it every time they're doing it. But at the other end of the spectrum, like I said before, they will seek out environments and interactions. Hey, it's Suleiman. Where they can act out their nature. And their nature is often to be in conflict, more specifically to take what was done to them, most likely, and do it to other people, which is, someone's really upset them and they want to really upset other people, which is a nice way of saying it. It's more like generate misery and suffering, because they're suffering, and it seems unfair that they're suffering and other people aren't suffering, so they're trying in some kind of weird way to balance the scales. Got where I was going with this. But those people will use this as an opportunity to escalate, because what a lot of times is happening is with the more toxic ones, they kind of want to cause other people to react to their toxic play. And again, this is play, I don't care about chat. Chat, I think I said earlier, in superficial, abstracted interactions, is mostly the rider. The more real a situation gets, the more it's elephant. And how you conduct yourself in a game, as far as how you play, is elephant territory. And a lot of people will say, hey, I just go on autopilot. I'm playing. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not throwing. Like, well, there's a reason that you've kind of removed your conscious awareness from what you're doing. Remove some of the responsibility. But they will want to get other players upset so that the other players will, like, say something. But as soon as the other players say something or respond in kind, oh, it's go time. Now they've got their justification for escalation, and now they have the bad person they're punishing in their own place, because there are many levels. That's why, like, Elephant and Rider isn't a great match for this, but they know what they are, but they tell themselves a story that they're not, and they have a belief that essentially they should be punished, and they find other people to punish on their behalf. That's a big part of it too. Have you ever known someone who, when you're interacting with them in face-to-face real-life interactions, they're one way, but in text interactions, they are a completely different person? It's actually kind of jarring. I've only seen a stark contrast in a couple of different people, but it is really weird. And it's because when you're interacting face-to-face in person, it's a much more real thing. But when you're interacting in text, it's much more abstracted. And you'd think that, and it goes both ways. Sometimes people are much more aggressive, typically passive-aggressive in text, but they won't be that way at all. There was someone I was dating a while ago. She seemed really cool in person, but the weird, controlling, passive-aggressive, weird implications worked in, and like, if texting didn't exist, I would never have seen the side of the person, I think. Well, probably eventually, but then it's also been the other way, where there's people that are really, really nice in text, but then they play like freaking assholes. And there was an incident running Karazhan last night, where there's this really nice guy, and he's got a fairly new guild, and I'm not sure where he finds them, but relatively new players that don't know a whole lot about the game, and the gear isn't great, their skills are kind of lacking, but they're nice people. And as sensitive as I might be to people being toxic, I get, like, no reading off these people. Now, maybe if they were more skilled, that might change, but let me get another flight here. But they are really nice. And I'm in a different guild, and I noticed that two people from my guild were there. And I was playing the priest you see here, and I was doing the smite thing, which is often very upsetting, especially if you're a warlock, and you're getting beat half the time by a smite priest. And that seemed to be a little triggering. But what I actually think was that he definitely had the feel that he was looking to initiate a conflict so that he could justify, raging out about something. And he chose the most peculiar thing. It was, there's a fight, Shade of Iran. And if you don't know it, it's a very unusual fight. It's actually kind of a really fun fight, because the boss doesn't really have an aggro table, which is, how various abilities cause various amount of threat, and whoever has the most threat on normal fights will draw the attention of the boss. But this boss, well, he technically has an aggro table, but it resets every couple seconds. So he's not tankable. There's no way as a tank to keep him on you, like, consistently, like, at all. And he will just, whoever happens to hit him first right after it resets is who he'll pay attention to. But you don't know when he's resetting. It might even, I think it's between 2 and 3 seconds. I don't think it's a set time. But there is a paladin buff called Blessing of Salvation. And it is a very powerful buff in that it reduces the threat generated by a player, their character, by 30%. This is quite significant because a lot of times you will be threat capped while you're dealing damage. In other words, you hit a point where you can't do any more damage without drawing the attention of whatever it is you're fighting. And if you draw the attention away from the tank, who is specially set up to mitigate the damage they take, that same damage directed at you will typically be get you killed. So on this fight, where that Blessing of Salvation buff is utterly useless, the typical strategy is to switch that to something that is more useful, which, if you're a physical damage dealer, it is a Blessing of Might, which increases your attack power, or if you're a caster, Blessing of Wisdom, which increases how quickly your mana regenerates. This is a standard strat. Everybody does it. It's not even something that's debatable. You're replacing a worthless buff with something that provides benefit. And this was the thing the guy decided to get upset about. As a warlock, you can always, there's an ability you have where you can turn your health into mana. So they don't run into the same mana issues that other classes do, but you still have to sacrifice some health. And in a fight where the boss is randomly targeting people, sacrificing some health for some mana, it puts you in extra danger. So it's basically good for everybody. And he was arguing that the boss does have a threat table and that he needs the salvation, despite the fact that, and I'd noticed this before, and so did the raid leader, and he pulled me into another channel in Discord afterwards because he was worried about it, because I'll explain why. But he obviously had noticed it too, to where we have a threat meter, and if you surpass the tank's threat, it's very bad, because not only can you get yourself killed, you can end up getting other people killed. And if too many people get killed, you are probably going to wipe on that boss. And there are times, especially with warlocks, where they have an ability called Soul Shatter, which whatever threat, your threat on all targets is cut in half, which is really, really powerful. And a lot of times, if a warlock doesn't seem to be paying attention to their threat, and it looks like they are in danger of overtaking the tank, the raid leader will say, "Hey, can you shatter, please?" This was ignored by the warlock, and this is a thing that DPS will do, and warlocks typically have a lot of health, so they can afford to take a hit or two without dying. They're a little bit more durable just because of their health. Excuse me. And there's a game that DPS will do where, just for fun, they'll pull stuff off the tank and make the tank run around. Basically, making the tank's job much harder than it needs to be for the lulls. And it's one of those things where someone will tell themselves, the facade is that, hey, I'm just having fun. I'm just being trolly. But it's really toxic, because where's your audience? Who's enjoying this other than you? And maybe one of your toxic friends. So the guy who was making sport out of trying to pull stuff off the tank and not listening to the raid leader when he asked him to shatter is now complaining that his threat reduction buff on a boss where it's useless. Apparently he was talking crap about me in tells to the raid leader, or maybe it was in raid chat and I missed it or something, but basically it was clear he was mad that I was, outperforming him at times, and was getting, but I think he was just, he was looking to basically sabotage a raid, and he had planned on bailing to leave the raid hanging, but he needed his justification. And he just, and I've said this a lot, like they're people who are, what the person ends up doing in this situation, in situations like this, it's inevitable that they're going to find something to get toxic about in chat, and they're going to get really mad, and then they're going to act like no other people aren't being reasonable, and that they're being treated unfairly, and then they're going to escalate to doing shittier and shittier stuff until they get kicked. The question is what it is they're going to latch onto to justify this. And he picked something really weird. Usually you'd pick something ambiguous, but like there's no ambiguity in this. There's no there's no other side of the argument of, hey, you don't need a threat reduction buff on Shade of Iran because it doesn't have an aggro table, or not one that persists for more than a couple seconds. So it's kind of a good example of the inevitability of the escalation of someone who all along was going to pull something like this. So even after the fight, he just wouldn't let it go, and he was getting more and more belligerent. So the raid leader kicked him. And then the other guy from my guild, excuse me a second, work you mute button. And then the other guy from the guild left, who I didn't notice him doing anything particularly douchey, but I think the warlock thought that we'd both leave because we're all in the same guild. And it's like, no, this is pretty clear to me. I would have kicked your ass too. I know what you're doing. And then they were really curious to see if they got replaced or if the raid, failed or whatever. For the record, finished the rest of it with 8 people, and 2 of the people were way undergeared and only doing like about half the minimum DPS you'd want someone in there doing. Like they were in horrible gear and their DPS was terrible, but they were trying. And I'm actually shocked. It reset my scale for what was possible in that place. In that we had our damage output was so low and so many of the fights went on so long. I really didn't think we were going to be able to finish that way. And somehow we did. And it was amazing and so just gratifying, because the thing that the toxic person wanted to happen didn't happen, and they still succeeded. I don't need any gear out of there, but a couple of other, there were a few undergeared people that got quite a few pieces, and that's pretty awesome. And I was in there for badges because I got one more piece of badge gear I need for my smite build. So I got my badges, they got some gear, we finished it. And then like in guild chat there and messages, they're trying to like get me to engage on this thing, and it's like, and apparently most of the argument was between me and that guy. Like I didn't realize he had gotten that upset about like me saying what everybody knows about the Shade of Iran fight. But again, it wasn't about the thing that it was pretended to be about. It was about something else, and that was just the justification. And for more mundane examples in real life, I'm sure you probably know someone that complains about all the drama that comes into their life, that they wish that they didn't have all this crap to deal with all the time. But if you actually examine the choices they make, they are constantly putting themselves into situations that are going to be dramatic, and they're constantly getting involved in stuff they really don't need to get involved in. And then playing the victim and then acting like, I just can't take in. And it's in so many different ways. You could even look at it like a guy who, I just can't find a nice woman. And it's like, well, hanging around bars at closing time is probably not where you're going to find the high quality women. And it goes both ways. There'll be women that have this issue of like, oh, all these guys treat me like crap, and none of them want a serious relationship. So maybe don't bang them right away, Everybody, particularly guys, add value to things they have to work for. And it's probably something you should think about. With moral considerations aside, just straight up pragmatism. Like, you don't want to devalue the thing, anything that affects your negotiation in a relationship. But also some people, especially, you guys will do this too, but women who got kind of treated like crap by their dad will unconsciously seek out guys that do that. It's like, why do I always end up with these jerks? Like, well, because you gravitate towards them, because your elephant is looking for something familiar. And we tend to imprint, like, unless you do a lot of self-reflection and soul-searching and self-observation, you are most likely going to seek out something like your opposite gender parent. It's just what people do. Made me real happy when my daughter was dating, like, I mentioned earlier, there are people out there that, like, their facade and their nature are, like, unified. They are exactly what they appear to be. And trust me, there was nobody on the planet I was more motivated to find fault with. And it's also these people that make me realize, like, it humbles me in that, like, I like to think I'm a good person because I put a lot of work into it. But there are people out there that have just such a good nature that they like glow compared to everybody else. And it gives you something to aspire toward. Like, I have funny thing is, one of the disconnects between my facade and my nature is I actually think I'm pretty freaking awesome. But that's a dangerous thing to think because you get arrogant, and arrogance is bad. So I will often, I like self-deprecating humor. I like having jokes at people's expense. And there's one person that it's always, I know that this person's always going to be okay if I make a joke at their expense, and that's me. It's also good for keeping the ego in check. And I will typically understate my, understanding or prowess in things, just because so many people overstate it, that if you understate it and then people realize that, you are actually better than you presented it as, it makes you look like a more honest person, and what you say gets taken more seriously. And that's helpful. So there was something else I wanted to cover, and I can't remember what it was. Well, this also has a lot to do with online conflict. Times when people expose their nature. You will get your best look at someone's elephant in a few different scenarios. When someone's basically situations where people are unable to maintain the facade and will let the mask slip. These would be when people are tired, when people are in pain, when people are sick, and when people are drunk. And the last one, drunk, there are a lot of people who will seek out intoxication because it's a justification to let their elephant run rampant. Because you have a ready-made excuse. Oh, I was drunk. I mean, how many songs are about a guy apologizing what he did with the excuse that he was drunk? Like, you still did the thing. Did someone dose you with alcohol without your knowledge? No, you chose to enter that state of your own free will. And what you do while you're in that state is your responsibility. And if you find yourself consistently doing things, shitty things while you're in the state you chose to be in, you're responsible for those things too. But people are really good at convincing themselves of things that let them act out their true nature. And I wasn't sure I wanted to talk about this, but a lot of the really bad people who do really bad things, particularly to children. I would say what's the term people are using now? The PDF files, the intergenerational romance advocates, the North American Milton Borough Lookalike Association from South Park, but the other NAMBLA. Anyway, these types who are seeking it out, most likely because they were the victim of it themselves, it is not a coincidence that roles in society that allow you unsupervised access to children that aren't yours will be proliferated with this type of person. Part of their nature is the desire to revisit on others what was done to them. So, the priesthood, Boy Scout troop leader types, Magic the Gathering judges. I would say Hollywood, but there's a few types of people that want to, and generally, just the desire for power is often just unconsciously understood as a path to act out the things that you could not get away with at your current status and means. And a lot of the people that are drawn to these areas are drawn to them for that reason. Some will just like give up on that and will just snatch kids, but this is a lot less common now because it used to be a lot easier to get away with that. It's not so easy to get away with it now. But I think the vast majority of people who seek out power, now it's not just a kid thing. Like, it could just be that you want to be able to treat the vast majority of people like crap and get away with it. And if you garner enough power, you can do that. You may just want to be in a position to be able to make other people miserable, and power grants that as well. So I think a lot of the drive of a lot of the people, now I'm not talking about creative types, well, although they may be in there too. I'm just talking about the types that just, want a great deal of power. Now, the lottery thing is also an interesting, I'm stepping on another stream that I want to do. And essentially it's this idea that power corrupts. And it's my opinion that power does not corrupt. Power reveals. And it's because you think you know what you are, but all of your experience with yourself is a constrained version of yourself. You just understand on an unconscious level that there are things that you simply can't do because of the penalties that will be levied against you if you were to do those things. But many people are often very surprised by their own behavior when they find themselves in a situation where they can act certain things out without consequence. The most common example is, Sorry, I turned up the graphics and my video card did not like that for a second. You know what? I can wrap it up here. I got nothing pretty to show you. I suppose I could load another video, but well, this has been Grinding Meeting number 38. Personality, Facade, and Nature. I am the Expert Layman. You all have a great day.